Here we go. Here we go, brownies. The kids cardiac, catch me in the Muni where the party at. Dog pound, turn up with the elf up on my starter cap. Brought him back, boy we from the land and we proud of that. Louder man, front to the back, here we go, I got him shouting that. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Here we go, brownies. Here we go, brownies. Stand up. Here we go, brownies. Let's go. Game on the line, Joe Thomas, I promise. Jim Brown running through opponents, how I got this. I return like Josh Cripps, head for the mini, got the dog pound jumping. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Here we go, brownies. Here we go, brownies. Stand up. Here we go, brownies. Let's go.
Cleveland, this is for you. This is for you.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Here We Go Brownies podcast. I am Allie Ellery, coming at you live from Pensacola, Florida. Joined with me, as always, out in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio. We've got Dustin. Dustin, how is it going?
Allie, you accurately said it right. It is beautiful and almost 70 degrees in Cleveland, Ohio today. So, yes, it was a beautiful day in Cleveland. The sun is out. The wind, I'll put up with it. Anytime I can get 70 degrees in Cleveland in the middle of March, sign me up. But, yeah, goes right back to the 40s over the next week. So welcome to Ohio March. I mean, you know this, flip-flops to a coat all in a day. So, but no, weather's great. Basketball playoff is going to be here soon. Opening day for the Guardians. There's a lot going on. We got quarterbacks showing up in town. Summer, it's a good time to be a sports fan in Cleveland.
Things are certainly picking up. That's true. We've got the Cavs playing. Unfortunately, 2 back-to-back losses. Hope to turn it around tonight against the Sacramento Kings. But then you look at the guards. They're upcoming. You've got March Madness happening pretty much by the time this gets posted. And of course, we've got the draft. We've got free agent quarterbacks in town. Just a lot to talk about. It makes our lives a little bit easier this time of year when there's actual sports news that we get to discuss rather than just making stuff up in the middle of February. So, it is welcome. It is welcome news. But nonetheless, we're excited for tonight's show. We're hopeful that Mary Kay Cabot's going to be able to join us tonight. We're going to get her perspective on what's going on in Cleveland and what we think this team is going to do going forward. But before we get into it, Dustin, let's kick things off. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about, let's do a little bit of Legacy Integrated.
Yeah, guys, Legacy Integrated. If you're looking around the corner, some things to do financially with some of your goals, that's right. Legacy Integrated assets individuals with hands-off, diversified investment options that target generational passive income. Email Brian at the Integrated group. That's Brian at integrated.com with an email. Think about it. No trash, no toilets, passive income, fractional ownership. That is legacyintegrated.com, and ask for Brian to learn more about that.
1 second here. I just want to see something. Okay. I just saw one of our comments here, James. They just got to get Chubb's deal done. I thought James was announcing the news. They just got Chubb's deal done. So I was just scouring the internet to see if that was the case because I'm so anxious to get it done.
James, don't scare us like that. Come on.
No, it's my fault. I misread it. James, I agree. They just got to get that done. That'll be another just piece to the puzzle there. I want to give a shout out to our friends over at We Bleed Ohio. I've got this pretty cool, tonight I'm wearing the t-shirt.
Look at that.
Yeah. Very, very comfy, very nice. I encourage you to check them out. They've got some really cool designs, basketball, baseball, football. James, I wish I'm stressing over here. You and me both. Also, quick shout out to our friend Larry. Larry, I want to thank you for the wine. It was a beautiful wedding gift. We've enjoyed it. We will continue to enjoy it. So really appreciate that. But like I said, hopeful to have Mary Kay Cabot on here in just a little bit. Dustin, today she talked about some mutual interest between Carson Wentz and the Cleveland Browns. Let's talk about that because last time we spoke, last Wednesday at this time, we were talking about the Russell Wilson visit to Cleveland, and we were hopeful maybe by this time this week that we were talking on the podcast that there would be a deal done for some quarterback, whether it's Russ, whether it's Kirk, whoever it is. There's a quarterback on the roster right now. We have Kenny Pickett. Let's talk about kind of the quarterback carousel with free agents and what's going on in the market.
Yeah, unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers decided to go to Australia and hang out at the beach for a week. So unfortunately or fortunately, that is clogging what's left of free agent quarterbacks in the National Football League. I think I saw today that at least the Vikings have said no thanks. They're moving on, that he's not going to be a part of that. So that kind of at least creates some of those dominoes to go away. So it'll be interesting to hear Mary Kay's opinion on that when she comes on here in a few moments. Mm-hmm. But, for me, we had, Russell Wilson made a trip to Cleveland. Quarterbacks these days don't typically make those rare appearances. So there was something to that. I don't think you make a trip to Cleveland and sit down and get a tour of the facility if there wasn't mutual interest, like Carson Wentz, same type of thing, if there wasn't some kind of mutual interest. And at the end of the day, I think this is all these conversations we're having are bridge quarterbacks at the end of the day, right? Like these aren't the long-term answer for the Cleveland Browns. So whoever this may be. And, I think there's a little smoke still out there. I don't know where this will go, but I think Cousins is still in play for the Browns. I think that is still an option. I know they picked up his $10 million, but it doesn't mean the Browns don't say, hey, look, this is Kevin Stefanski's offense. He knows Kirk Cousins. He was the quarterback coach, the offensive coordinator for him. Let's bring him in. We can win some games with him. What pick is that going to take, and how much do the Browns have to eat of that contract, and how much do the Falcons have to eat that? So I think there's a lot in play here still. So I think it'll be interesting to see what comes of this. So it'll be interesting how that all plays out. So,
well, I think especially with the Carson Wentz situation, we're going to let Mary Kay talk about that here in just a moment. Looks like she's still trying to get connected. The Carson Wentz situation, if that is the way it goes and he comes to Cleveland, I still think all signs point to taking a quarterback early in the draft. So let's go ahead and bring her on. We're going to talk about it. Dustin, real quick before we bring her on, why don't you give us a quick word from our friends over at Lake Erie Distillery?
That's right, guys. Lake Erie Distillery, world-class winning spirits right here in Northeast Ohio, in Willoughby, Ohio. Look forward to the event that we'll be hosting there on April 19th from 5 to 8 p.m., making some wonderful cocktails, the Here We Go Brownies Mule, the Here We Go Brownies Shot, and the Here We Go Brownies Cocktail. So join us on April 19th from 5 to 8 p.m. Look at our page and look at the event page there and then get invited to that. And your ticket includes a free drink ticket. So how crazy is that? So it'll be a lot of fun.
I love a free drink, but let's bring her on. Mary Kay Cabot to the program. Mary Kay, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. This is crazy times right now. There's a lot to talk about. We were just talking about kind of leading up to the draft, free agency right now. It's a good time to be a sports fan, but certainly, when you're behind the microphone, the Browns are giving us a lot to talk about right now. We were just discussing the whole Carson Wentz situation, which you discussed today, that the Browns and Carson Wentz have some mutual interest. If I could turn it over to you, what do you know?
Well, basically the situation with Carson Wentz right now is he's someone that the Browns do have mutual interest with in the event that they don't sign Russell Wilson. I think if they could sign Russell, that would be their first choice. And if that doesn't happen, then I think Carson Wentz is in play. And I also still think that Joe Flacco is in play. So this is not a given that it's Carson if it's not Russell, but he's sort of a new name that enters the mix. And one of these three guys will probably end up here over the next couple of weeks.
Mary Kay, speaking of quarterbacks, there was some made of, the Falcons, picked up the $10 million over the weekend. Do you think there's still a possibility in the future where the Browns go after Kirk Cousins if they start talking and the trade looks mutual on their sides? I'm just curious.
That could be something that is still in play. But Kirk Cousins was mostly attractive to the Cleveland Browns when they felt like the Falcons were going to release him and that they could get him for the veteran minimum of $1.255 million. This was all before the Falcons decided to pay him the extra $10 million and to keep him around for at least a while at $37.5 million. They have to pay him $27.5 if he's on the team or not. So therefore, I think it's just a matter of them wanting to get something in return or keeping him around as the backup to Michael Penix. So that's what they have to figure out the Falcons do they want to, they're not going to just release him at that price point. So now they're going to be looking for compensation for him. And you can work that out in some creative ways, but I'm not sure that the Browns are going to want to give up very much to get a Kirk Cousins if they're going to draft a quarterback at number 2 overall, which I think they will do.
I agree. I think kind of all signs are pointing to the Browns taking a quarterback with their first pick in this upcoming draft. But in the event that they do go out and get somebody like Russ, or in this example, somebody like Kirk, does that kind of shift things and what you think they could do it to? Do you think that still means they're probably going to take a quarterback? Or do you think if they go out and get Russell Wilson, that maybe they're going to take a shot on Travis Hunter or somebody like that?
Well, out of those 3 quarterbacks that we have mentioned, and I'm talking about Russell, Joe, Carson. I don't necessarily have Kirk in the mix right now, but I suppose if you did end up with a Kirk, he would go into the Russell pile. If you do end up with someone very, very experienced like that, I suppose that could shift your draft plans a little bit. But I'm just going to stick with the tried and true. You've got the number 2 overall pick. You have a clear shot at one of the best 2 quarterbacks in the draft. You need a quarterback of the future. And I'm just trying not to overthink it. I still think that they probably would go with Shedeur Sanders there if Cam Ward is gone at number 1 overall. And again, they like other quarterbacks in the draft. You guys may have seen that yesterday I proposed something really crazy, and I got the wrath of the Twitter world, which is totally fine with me because I was going to quote tweet it and say, well, yeah, I got the same kind of reaction when I said the Browns should draft Josh Allen ahead of Baker Mayfield in 2018.
That's true. I was all in. I'm originally from Idaho, and I got to see Josh Allen all the time at the University of Wyoming. I'm like, this guy is built for Northeast Ohio. He's big, he's thick. I'm like, I'm all in on Josh Allen. Don't overthink this. He fits the lakefront. So I was all in on Josh Allen back then too.
Yeah. So the crazy thing that I proposed yesterday, if you saw it or if you didn't see it, was that the Browns should take Shedeur at number 2 and then trade back up into the first round and take Tyler Shuck. So a lot of people had a problem with that, but when you have 10 picks in the draft, you can have a little bit of fun. And when you need quarterbacks, quarterbacks can be used as trade bait. They can be used as a backup. They can be used as your next starter after your initial starter. So there's a lot of ways that you can go. If I have had that many picks, I would for sure be taking 2 quarterbacks in this draft if there are 2 that you are intrigued by.
So I was going to ask you, just even actually before you even said that yesterday, one of the questions that I had to ask you was, we know who the top 2 quarterbacks are in this draft class, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders. Who, in your opinion, is QB3? Is that where you would go with it? But if we're really looking at Mary Kay's big board here, who would you have as QB3?
It's a great question, and I don't have my big board set yet, let's say, because I still have to do some things before I feel comfortable saying who the QB3 would be. Right now, I might put Jackson Dart at QB3, but there are some people that think he could go as high as 3rd. I mean, it could go 1, 2, 3 QB again. And that still wouldn't preclude someone from coming back and getting drafted later in the first round. And I don't know exactly who that would be at this point. But I will say that Tyler is getting a lot of run, and some people are thinking of him very highly at this point. And then, of course, you've got Jalen Milroe. He ran very fast at his pro day today. And, I don't have him next right now. But look, nobody has Lamar Jackson being the 2-time NFL MVP either. He went 36 in 2018. So it's an inexact science. And people can laugh all they want at, at this time of year at people's thoughts and ideas. But no one really knows how this is going to turn out yet.
No. Definitely not. Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, as I say, we had Nathan Zagura on, and he said, the Browns have only been at the top of this draft twice in the last 25 years, and it was Baker Mayfield and Tim Couch. That's the only time that we've been up there. And he goes, the further you go down in the draft, the higher chance of missing on a quarterback, the further it goes down. And then sometimes there's those ones that just stand out that don't come there. But so you're right. And he suggested, heck, take 2 quarterbacks. Like, he was very adamant, like, why not take 2 quarterbacks when you have
he was the same way that I was, taking 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I went on Cleveland Browns Daily about a week ago, or maybe a week and a half ago. I can't even remember if I said that. Maybe I did, that I thought that they should take 2 quarterbacks. I've been very vocal about that over the last few weeks or so.
Yeah, he joined us from the combine, and he was like, heck, man, take 2, because guess what? You don't always get it right at quarterback. So just shifting gears, I know a lot of the fans that are watching the show here tonight, Nick Chubb, any news on Nick Chubb? Are you hearing any rumblings of the Browns bringing him back, or is he looking, or he's gotten some looks at other teams? Just curious on the Nick Chubb front, if you've heard anything.
Well, I do know that the Browns are open to bringing him back in the event that he goes out there and doesn't find the opportunity that he likes. They are definitely open to re-signing him, but they have to have a role for him too. They want to make sure that they have some carries for him. You don't want to have Nick Chubb around on your roster and you just don't have anything for him to do necessarily. So maybe they'll give it a little breathing room and revisit it after a period of time, but they're definitely open to having him back. And he's obviously a fan favorite. And I did say that it's sort of an end of an era recently, and that I didn't think that he would be back because I figured that they would probably draft a quarterback, and I wasn't sure that they would have a role for him. But I do think there is a world in which they can re-sign him and bring him back. And I know that would make fans very happy, which could be part of why they would do it.
Yeah, just kind of buying back some fan appreciation, I think, would go a long way. Currently with this Browns team, obviously coming off of a really tough year last year, and just going back to the combine, you got to see Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. From what we've heard, they're completely different on the field and off the field. What was your experience with both of these guys?
Well, mostly I talked to both of them, and so it wasn't so much watching them because they didn't work out there.
Yes.
But just in terms of just getting to know their personalities a little bit, I knew what Shedeur Sanders was all about already because I had seen him speak a number of times before. I didn't know much about Cam Ward, and so I listened very intently to him. I asked him a number of questions myself. I really liked him a lot. He's got a very interesting personality. He's very self-confident, very self-assured. He's a lot more understated than Shedeur. He doesn't have the flash and the razzle dazzle, but he's a really, really cool guy. I like him a lot. I think he's going to be good for whoever drafts him, both on and off the field. And if they had a chance to get him, I don't exactly know what they would do if they were both available at number 2, but I think it would be really hard to pass on Cam Ward.
Yeah.
And Mary, along those lines, do you see a scenario? I know there's been some made of this, that the Tennessee Titans are going to listen. They're going to take calls from teams. They're open to that. Do you see where there might be a possibility where the Browns wards their guy and see them moving up at number 1 to make sure they get their sure pick quarterback that they feel is going to be maybe a generational quarterback for the Browns in the future and finally get the answer right at quarterback? I'm just curious if you see there was a possibility for that.
Well, from what I can gather, that seems to be unlikely that they would trade up. And in my mind, if you're not willing to do that, then you must have your heart set on Shedeur. Because if you were torn, or if you liked Cam better than Shedeur, you would be willing to do that. And I just don't get the feeling that they are. And of course, we'll ask Andrew Berry more about that next week. I'm going to be heading down to West Palm Beach on the 29th for the NFL annual meeting. And we've got Andrew down there. We'll have Kevin down there again at the coaches breakfast, and we'll have the Haslams down there. So it's a very fruitful exercise to go to the owners' meetings because you really get a chance to talk to not only them, but other coaches too in the division and everywhere else. It's really a great time to get a lot of information. So looking forward to doing that. But I don't think that appears likely at the moment. But again, it's still early. Things can change.
I just want to talk about, right now, all the focus is what are the Browns going to do at number 2? I think you hold a lot of value in this draft, as you alluded to. And at number 33 overall, you're picking very highly in the second round. There's some pretty glaring areas of need for this team. I mean, running backs obviously one of them. We just talked about that. Defensively, they need some help. You need a tackle. You need some receivers. What do you think the Browns could potentially do at the number 33 overall pick? I know that there's some guys like Emeka Egbuka floating around out there. If he were to fall, I think that, a lot of people are kind of talking about that running back. You got Nick Chubb early in the second, back in 2018. Do you think that we could see that again and the Browns maybe get the next running back of the future? What do you think that looks like?
Well, I'll tell you what, I usually don't like taking running backs that high. But of course, it worked out great with Nick because he was one of a kind. I mean, he was so special. So that worked out perfectly for them. This is another draft in which I wouldn't be opposed to taking a running back really high. There are some really, really good ones in this draft. And the running game is sort of coming back into vogue once again. The NFL is so cyclical. And we see now that teams are running the ball again. And we saw what Saquon Barkley did, and we saw what Derrick Henry did. And of course, this is the AFC North, and you need to be able to run the ball. And we know that Kevin Stefanski has always liked to run it. So I think they're going to be getting back to some of that, which of course will help out your defense, and it will help out your new quarterback. So I certainly wouldn't be opposed to some of the amazing running backs in the second round. There are some absolute game changers there. And especially if you can get one that is a dual threat running back that can give you a whole lot in the passing game as well, you can really find a good weapon there in round two.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Allie.
Oh, yeah. I'll get you out of here on this one, Mary Kay. I know I'm seeing some of this in the comments here on the stream. We've got a couple of questions about the Myles Garrett situation. Now, I think a lot of fans are excited that this is done and eager to get Myles back out there. But of course, there was some turmoil here, and it was kind of a really awkward and clunky situation. The question kind of, I'm trying to find it here in the comments, but right here. Myles Garrett and his credibility after asking for a trade and then staying for the money. I mean, can you kind of just paint the picture of what went down? Just because from the fan perspective, this was a really awkward and clunky thing that kind of happened.
It really was. And one of the first questions that I asked Myles Garrett in the press conference the other day was, do you feel like you need to make amends to the fans that have basically just, been through the ringer with this whole situation? And I mean, a couple people asked questions before that, and that didn't come up yet. And I was like, oh no, I've got to go straight to the heart of the matter here. And that was, what are you going to say? What can you do to the fans? And his answer, which I actually thought was pretty good, was just to continue to play his way back into the hearts of the fans. To sack his way, to sack fumble his way into the hearts of fans, and to get back in the good graces that way through his play, because that was really a rough time that he put the fans through. And I do think that he needs to make up for it in a big way, not only on the field but off the field. And I think you'll see him do that. He was a little resistant to the notion of that he needed to apologize or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But he is going to try to let his play do the talking. And I can live with that answer.
Yeah, I can certainly appreciate it.
Yeah. And I just say real quick, Mary Kay, you noticed I just felt like in that press conference, it looked almost like he wanted to take more of a role from a leadership standpoint. I kind of took that away from that press conference, that he wanted to take on a larger role from a leadership standpoint. And I was just curious if you kind of noticed that, kind of him opening it up to them in that press conference, like, I'm going to be a louder voice in the locker room. At least that's what I took away from that press conference.
Yeah, I mean, every year I've watched Myles Garrett elevate his game in that way from a leadership standpoint, and really try to open up and be more vocal and engage more with his teammates. He's completely different now than when he showed up on the doorstep. He was a loner. He did his own thing. He marched to his own drummer. He didn't really engage with everybody. Now he really does. And he understands what his position is. And I think he's going to take that now to the next level. I really do. Yeah. And I think he adds something to his leadership style every single year. And I think I'm eager to see what it is that he's going to do this year, because it's going to be something. I just don't know what yet.
Right. Sure. Although it was awkward and kind of a weird situation, I think at the end of the day, it's still a positive that he is a Cleveland Brown. We're looking forward to watching him this season. Mary Kay, this was great. Thank you so much for taking the time for us.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Anytime. Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care.
That is Mary Kay Cabot. Dustin, I think it's really interesting when we talk about the potential of taking 2 quarterbacks in this draft class. I mean, look, you saw what Mary Kay said on Twitter yesterday. People ran with it. Everybody's calling her crazy, saying, what is she doing? But one thing about Mary Kay Cabot is she's very plugged in. And she does not care. She does not care. She will face the wrath of the Twitter warriors. And I really appreciate that. Now, Nathan Zagura did say, you know what, hell, take 2 quarterbacks. Why not? Yep. Now, he didn't say let's take them both in the first round. I think that's kind of the Browns would probably draw a line there. That's unprecedented.
Yeah.
But I think at some point, I would not be surprised to see the Browns taking 2 quarterbacks in this upcoming draft. I would not be surprised at all. Even going into training camp with 4 quarterbacks on the roster is not out of the realm of possibilities for this team. We even saw it last year with Deshaun Watson. You had Tyler Huntley at the time, Jameis Winston, DTR. That's not unheard of. And we even we had a couple of shows, Dustin, where we said, are the Browns really going to do this? Have 4 quarterbacks on the active roster? And I think that we're kind of gearing up in a world where maybe that actually is a possibility. Now, otherwise, I would not agree that you take 2 quarterbacks if you only had like 4 draft picks. But in a world where you've got 10 draft picks, I mean, why the hell not, right? I guess there's value in that. And I mean, Zagura mentioned about the hit rate on these guys.
Well, and she brought up a good point. Like, you use them for assets, right? Say you go with quarterback Shedeur Sanders at number 2, and Will Howard's still sitting around in round 3, and you went and got your running back in round 2. Well, guess what? Players get injured in training camp. Things happen. And then if you can leverage that and you feel like that guy's just not going to make the roster and you can give that to another team and get a draft pick for it, okay, well, you're just leveraging what you did in the draft. And I thought it was very interesting where Mary Kay brought up, you've got enough picks here that you can kind of move around, like I think we have now 3 6s, 2 7s. We have, I think, 2 4s or 2 5 or no, 2 4 or something like that. I mean, but we have like a 10 or 11 picks now. So I think there's an opportunity. Yeah. So now with all the compensatory, you can start kind of stacking a little bit. And,
sure.
And also, maybe give one up in 2026. So, there's all those things that come about, or 2027 as you kick the can and say, look, we have to rebuild because we haven't had 3 first-round picks in a long time. So we have to leverage.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even if we even just look at the draft board, or excuse me, like the draft order going into the draft so far this year, there has been 0 first-round movement. Every team holds their first-round pick in this draft class since like the first time since like the 90s. So there have been no trades. All of the teams own their original first draft pick, which is really not something we've seen in quite a long time. So yeah, it really is. Now, do I think that the draft is going to come and go and all teams are going to remain at where they have their draft picks? No, there will be trades. But at this point in time, I think it's very interesting that everybody's still holding on to that. I want to tell you about our friends over at Stadium Mustard. Guys, if you don't have Stadium Mustard in your kitchen this season, you're doing it wrong. The iconic brand, the iconic taste, beloved from ballparks to backyards and everywhere in between. Stadium Mustard is a smooth brown mustard rich in both taste and tradition. By the way, it is loved by millions, so be sure to head on over to stadiummustard.com to shop now. We are going to bring on Dr. David Ullery to the program. This interview is brought to you by our friends over at Lorella.
Here we go, Brownies Nation. Larry Lorella from Lorella Vineyards. Dustin Cook from Here We Go Brownies. We're here to talk a little bit about Here We Go Brownies wine. Dustin, let us know.
That's right, guys. The season wasn't what we wanted it to be, but the wine is amazing. Platinum-winning, award-winning wine. Here We Go Brownies wine. Come get it here at the winery or go to lorellavineyards.com. And remember, a portion of every single one of these bottles goes to the Greater Cleveland Food Bank to help those that are in need and hungry. That's right. Here we go, Brownies. Here we go.
Woof, woof.
All right, let's bring him on. The husband of the program, Dr. David Ullery. David, what's happening?
Hi, Allie and Dustin. Nothing much. Just enjoying the patio out here with the dogs finally. The weather's warm enough and bright enough that I can do it right now.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, the time change. There you go. That's true. Yeah.
Helped a lot.
It's quite nice. It's quite nice. David, you're gonna like this. We've got some chatter here in the comments. Friends of the program, James Frank and Joel Groff, are talking about how the Browns need to be aggressive like Detroit. And I think you're the perfect person to talk about this. But got to have that grit mentality like that of Dan Campbell. You know, David, obviously we're going to talk about some health related things. That's why you're here. But I also just want to talk a little bit about football. And the Browns really do have an opportunity to kind of hit the reset button a little bit. They've got a ton of draft picks. Now, they haven't really done much really at all here in free agency so far. I know we're waiting on a couple of things here and there to drop, like what Aaron Rodgers is going to do. We're waiting on a couple of things, but they really do have an opportunity to kind of reload, reset, and go into this year almost with a new mentality. Dustin, you talk about kind of Myles Garrett taking on more of a leadership role and maybe going out there and being more aggressive on the field. You know, David, you saw that transition from a really, really bad Lions team to what the Lions are today. Do you think that the Browns have those capabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think any team does, and I think it's about finding the right pieces and putting them in the right place and trusting the process. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it wasn't an overnight thing. Obviously, Dan Campbell came in talking about biting kneecaps off, and so certainly that happened overnight. But
That's crazy.
actually, like I know, infusing that into the program and the organization was not an overnight experience. Obviously, he had a great relationship from the get-go with the leadership above him, and I think Kevin similarly does with the leadership above him. And that's so important to be on the same page in order to kind of be like, hey, this is the route we're taking. We want guys who want to be here. We want guys who are going to fight for each other and fight for this organization and for this city, and understand that like this is a blue collar town. This is a fan base that has made their living being scrappy, being gritty, like getting their hands dirty and just digging in. And that was really, I mean, he emulated and tried to take on the personality of the city and turning the team around. And I think Cleveland absolutely has every opportunity to do that too. And it's not like it has to be a full turnaround. It's not like they're starting from the bottom with bringing in a new head coach. They have plenty of athletes and talent and players in place for that. And then you just plug in a couple more missing pieces, the right fit, the right guys, and you can absolutely achieve a similar turnaround. I mean, we saw it 2 years ago. They made the playoffs using six different starting quarterbacks, however many it was. And so you find, yeah, you find the right pieces, and you can absolutely, have an unprecedented run and turnaround like the Lions have experienced to this date. It just, it's hopefully something coming for the Browns for as long as they've had to, deal with the turmoil of being a Browns fan. And it's totally possible and doable with the current regime, I believe.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, David, that's you bring up a good point there, and I think that's why so many people fell in love with Baker Mayfield, because he was the underdog, had a chip on his shoulder, and the community resonated with that. Do you think? Let's just throw Shedeur Sanders out there. Do you think he has the mentality to take on that blue collar? Come on, I'm gonna take us to the promised land. Now, again, he's flashy. He's not like a Cam Ward where he's more reserved and stuff like that. But do you think someone like Shedeur Sanders can do that and bring somebody on like
that? I mean, just to be honest, like, I haven't seen a ton of him or watched a ton of him beyond just what we're getting, from draft coverage and things like that. However, I think yes, if you kind of look at his background and kind of where he's developed. I mean, it's not like he started at the top. He started at a lower level college program and went with his dad to turn around a Division I Big Five Group of Five program. And it's not like it was handed to him. I mean, they worked really hard, both in Florida and then not Florida, excuse me. Was it Jackson State? Jackson State. Jackson State. They worked really hard both there and at Colorado to create a turnaround, change the culture. And I mean, that's something that I know Allie and I've talked about, that it is a culture thing, and being able to do that and find success in that is a great example of that leadership and that mentality to be able to come in and kind of dig in and say, let's go to work. And so while maybe, like you said, he's not as reserved as other quarterbacks or options. He's maybe a little bit more flash to him. It doesn't matter as long as the evidence is there and the work is there to commit to a team, commit to an ideal, commit to a standard, and then get after it. And I definitely think he's at least shown that he is capable of doing that, and would definitely have an opportunity in Cleveland to do that.
I think when you look at Shador, and I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole here, but to answer that question, or just kind of to echo what David said, look at everywhere he's been. You look at Jackson State, kind of shifted the culture there and went to go play with his dad. Now, that alone is a huge risk. That can blow up in your face very quickly. So to be able to not only just go and change the culture and turn it into a winning program, but do it with your dad, I mean, that takes a lot. And then to go to Colorado, shift the program there, change the culture, and give it a not only winning football, especially in the first year, but also fun football to watch. I do think he has what it takes to be the leader, separate from the assets that he has on the football field. I think he's got those intangibles. I really do. And that's what the Browns need at quarterback. They need somebody that can be the face of the franchise, and change the culture. That, I mean, period, point blank. That has to be it. And I don't know who it's going to be. Obviously, we don't know what the Browns are going to do, but I think the top two guys have that about them. David, I want to turn it over to you. What do we have going on? Any injuries, anything like that? I mean, not a lot of news, but give us what you got.
Don't really have a ton in the way of updates. We talked about it last week with JOK. Nothing's come out beyond what was kind of discussed from that article over the weekend before last. With Chubb on the injury front, I mean, we know his knee was recovered and it was just his foot he was dealing with. Really not a whole lot that happened in the last week. One thing I guess that is kind of relevant and we all saw very popularly on social media was Deshaun's video.
Yep.
Deshaun rehabbing in Cleveland and repping all the Cleveland gear and showing that he's at least in video and highlight form putting in the work to get back to it. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if he is doing all of his rehab in Cleveland. I don't know if he came in for a weekend for a video shoot. I don't know the story there, but I mean, he's at least showing that like in that video form that he's training hard with the boot on and doing what he can within the boundaries of his rehab protocol to continue bettering himself and getting himself in shape. So he certainly appears to have, at least based on the video, a comeback mentality, a work hard, get back to it mentality. And I guess we'll see if, this second time around in terms of recovery from the Achilles is more successful than the first one.
I mean, you don't think like his timetable is kind of what we thought it was going to be still, right? Like that video doesn't really say otherwise. It doesn't say he's necessarily going to be back any sooner. It's still kind of, I mean, we're really not going to see a lot of him this season, if at all.
No, I would agree. I don't think that video is necessarily any indication of his an accelerated recovery or anything like that. So his second surgery was in January. And so, I mean, we're just 2 months out. So he's in the boot still. He'll probably be in the boot for another 2 to 4 weeks. And so we're not talking about out of the boot in regular shoes until April at the soonest. And when he does get to that point, at least the protocol that I use is you're not in a shoe on your own. The shoe has heel lifts in it that keeps your foot kind of plantar flex to keep the Achilles tendon shortened before you start lengthening it by flattening the foot out. And so even if he gets back in the regular shoe wear in April, he's not going to be back into full flat neutral shoes until mid-April, even into possibly May. And so then you have to talk about returning to normal walking, returning to kind of faster paced walking, and then a progression to return to running. And so, the prospect of even beginning to run really doesn't kind of come to realization until maybe June or July for him. And by that point, we're into summer camp and certainly not anywhere ready to be talking about pushing off and launching balls downfield. So I don't think that video is any indication of a change in his timeline necessarily. I still think we would anticipate, between 6 to 9 months at least after January before he's going to see any game action. And 6 is very very optimistic based on this injury. It's probably closer to 9 to 12 months. And so I would say similar to Chubb last year, if there's no other setbacks and he anticipates making some sort of return, it won't be until October at the soonest, I would expect, just based on dealing with these injuries and dealing with the rehab and knowing that he had to have 2 surgeries within 2 months.
David, I have a quick question for you. With the combine being over, everybody going through their reps and everything, there's a lot of people that don't go to the combine because they want to maybe not risk injury, if they know they're going to probably fall between this spot in the draft. Is there anybody that you see that, has a nagging injury or is recovering that could be a steal possibly in this draft? Like, I think a lot of people thought Nick Chubb could have been a first-round pick, but he had that injury, knocked him into that second round, and the Browns stole him. We obviously realize now because of how valuable he was to the, just to his production. Just curious if there was any player that when you were doing all these guys that were injured in the draft, if there was anybody that kind of stood out. And you may not have the answer, but I was just curious if there was a person that stood out that could be like a steal, based on everything that's happened.
Or even somebody that could potentially drop, right, too.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Either way. Yes.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. It's because we know that plays a huge role in terms of these players' marketing availability and kind of draft stock. We touched on it before with Abdul Carter. I don't think his shoulder or foot injury are really going to impact his draft stock that much. They came out and said that he's not planning on having surgery for the foot, which indicates it's probably going to heal on its own uneventfully. Similarly for the shoulder, it's not something that, once it's healed, no one doesn't linger or cause many issues. And so for someone like him, I don't think it impacts it too much. We touched on it last week as well, or 2 weeks ago with Josh Simmons. I mean, he had a patellar tendon tear, so it could go both ways for him. It could certainly be kind of a like you said, a steal because he had surgery to repair that, and he's going to come off recovery from that. I think Kuiper's still got him going in the first round though to the Texans, which they need after getting rid of Tunzel, and so it doesn't seem like that's going to hurt him too much. He may have been a top 20, top 10 pick if he didn't get injured. I don't anticipate his draft stock should fall much. Now, this injury is a little bit more rare than other injuries that we typically see in linemen. Usually you hear of like an MCL tear, even an ACL tear, but a patellar tendon tear is a little different, and it's a little bit more of a I don't want to say fragile tissue, but it's a little bit more tenuous, and you have to be a little bit more careful and cautious about that when you go through recovery. So certainly there's a chance that his stock could fall just because of that injury, and it's sort of unprecedented when you look at other linemen across the league. Other guys, I don't have any off the top of the head, but that's not a bad topic for me to kind of dive into before next week, just to kind of bring up some more just for a little bit more conversation related to the draft as we sneak closer and closer to April, because that is so relevant, and there are any number of more guys who are injured that were injured that I'm just not thinking of off the top of my head.
Dustin, David, you mentioned Abdul Carter and his feet. I want to kind of just talk about Myles Garrett, and now that we know that he is going to be on this team and we can expect him to be a week 1 starter, do you anticipate him to have any surgery on his feet situation rather, this offseason? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I know that was kind of like almost like a very nebulous, vague thing that was occurring, that was like a recurring theme. Like, he's got this foot problem. It's been since he was a kid. Should he have surgery? Should he not have surgery? And there's really never like a clear-cut answer to that. And I mean, even just searching now, you try and find anything on it, and there's nothing since September. Any like recent articles kind of discussing what exactly it is and what he may need. Now, again, I know we talked about it. He had an MRI on the injured, or I guess painful foot, which came back negative for any acute injury. And that doesn't mean there isn't something wrong with it structurally. But acutely, there was no injury that required intervention at the time. And so it's a great question, just because I know it was a topic of discussion for us last season. And I wish we had more information about it, because it hasn't been disclosed beyond what we knew in season last year. And hopefully there's motivation from multiple facets having a new deal, including taking the proper time and care to address it as needed, whether it's orthotics, whether it's special training, whether it's special shoes, whatever it takes to be able to prolong his career and just extend the amount of time he can be on the field, both in game and in season, without having to take breaks because of more of a chronic problem. And there may be nothing that can solve it either. It may be something that he just has to deal with and know his limitations. But he's still so impactful when he's on the field that it's totally worth it.
Yeah. Question for you. Is that a We Bleed Ohio shirt you got on?
In fact, I believe it is. Look at this thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
look at that. That's pretty cool.
And I'm a big fan of kind of the throwback colors here.
Yeah, and as I say, you got the double XL there, and they got the right size even. I love it. So.
Oh yeah, it fits great, super comfortable, and definitely wearing it in anticipation of we got a game tonight with the 9 o'clock Central Time tip.
That's right.
I know.
8 o'clock.
I'm sorry.
15
We got
minutes.
markers here.
Oh yeah, I can hear Ludo. Anyways, all right, David. Well, I'll take that as a hint to let you go handle those heathen. But
The dog pound. He's got to go take care of the dog.
you gotta go take care of the dog pound. But David, thanks for joining us. We always appreciate it.
Thanks for having me
Go
on,
Browns.
guys.
Thanks,
Go
David.
Browns.
Go Browns.
That is Dr. David Ullery, the doctor of the program. That was brought to you by our friends over at Lorello Vineyards. Before we move on, just want to tell you about our friends over at True Fan Travel. They are taking over stadiums and cities worldwide. They are fueled by the passion of the most dedicated fans. True Fan Travel unites fans through all-inclusive sports travel with seamless accommodations and exclusive experiences. Together, they create unforgettable memories that celebrate the love of the game and being together. Dustin, before we move on, why don't you tell our listeners about City Barbecue?
Guys, City Barbecue. That's right. 6 Northeast Ohio locations. Go check them out. In great communities like Solon and Beechwood and Avon and Medina. Go check them out. They're all over Northeast Ohio. And by the way, they're also down all the way to Columbus for those folks that watch us on down there in Columbus or wherever you're watching us from. They're always, always got veteran deals. Also great for catering for your office, your weddings, or any event you have. But they make it right. They make it good. And I tell you what, every time I go in there, I just want to go back again. And by the way, the bread pudding, I can't say enough about the bread pudding. It's
There you go. Sounds like a delight. Some news that has happened since we last spoke. The Bengals have since paid Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Jamar Chase becomes the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, just off of that happening to Myles Garrett. So this is interesting. I want to talk about what this does to the landscape of the National Football League, Dustin, because this is kind of unprecedented. If you look at some other teams like Philly, for example, they have a clear-cut 1 and 2 and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but their contracts didn't come due at the same time. You've got other teams out there that have 2 really good receivers, but they pay them at different times. Cincinnati, you've got a very handsomely paid Joe Burrow and 2 very, very handsomely paid receivers. And clearly the focus in the National Football League is offensively, you have to be able to score points. But what are you going to do? This is an organization that historically has not really been that generous towards their players. You have to wonder what they're going to do with their offensive line, with the defense. What do you think this does to the landscape of the NFL?
Well, it's weird because we always bitch and moan that the Cincinnati Bengals never pay their players, and they finally paid their players, which is kind of, they flipped the script for what the Cincinnati Bengals do. I'm not shocked that they paid him. I guess I'm more shocked at the amount of money they paid him at the end of the day for both of them with those huge contracts, because what the hell are you going to do on defense, and how are you going to run the rest of your football team? Are you going to have the 32nd ranked defense in the National Football League? Because that's a lot of your salary cap where you just threw at 3 individual players.
Yeah.
How are you going to – where's your pass rush? All these things come to mind now. Okay, you can put up 50 points, but the opponents can do that too if you don't have a defense. So I just –
Sure.
That's the only part that worries me. Good for them for getting their contracts, and Joe Burrow actually can rest at night. And I know there were some big hugs, and they showed some videos that he was excited that, he goes pay the guys, and he probably had some influence on that. But
I'm sure.
Now I just worry, and I don't worry because they play in the AFC North. So let's go. I just don't.
Yeah, I think. I'm sure if you're a Cincinnati fan, you're excited.
Yeah.
You get your guys, and I think if the Browns were in this position, we would be saying the same thing. You pay your players, but I think this is going to be really interesting now. If you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, who I think they have good value with Mike Gesicki with their tight end. They lose Joe Mixon last year. He goes to Houston. Defensively, they have Trey Hendrickson requesting a trade, and he's really the only thing they have up front on the defensive line. Sam Hubbard retired. He is really the defense. They're not getting a ton of production elsewhere. Initially, when you look at that as a Cincinnati fan, which we are not, but I would imagine you look at that deal and you're like, okay, cool, we got our guys. But then you look at the rest of the teams in the NFL, the AFC specifically, you've got so many other teams that have really good quarterbacks, really good run game, really good offensive line, and a good receiver, and an above average defense. And
Correct. Defense, the above average.
Yeah, they have all of that rather than just 3 explosive playmakers or,
Right.
3 explosive players. And I think if you look at the bigger picture as a Cincinnati fan, again, which we are not, I would have some hesitation.
Yeah.
It would kind of scare the living you-know-what out of me long term.
I got to be honest. Like, the only other team that seems like they're making right moves in the AFC North lately is, that I hate to say it, the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
With some of the moves they're making. But I mean, the Steelers, sign a running back or sign a wide receiver that they don't even know who the hell he's going to throw to. I think that's
I don't know what they're doing. I mean, not that I don't care. I hope they fail, but who I think is having a really good free agency period and leading up to the drafts is the Denver Broncos. I think they're doing a great job surrounding Bo Nix with
what you're supposed to do.
affordable talent, building an offensive line. I'm impressed with what the Denver Broncos have done this free agency. And I think the other question with the Bengals is like, how I think that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are great receivers. T. Higgins is probably a number 1 wide receiver on most NFL teams that,
Yes.
100%. But you have to think, like, could you have gotten better value to be able to have other items? If you're going to part with one, in my opinion, it would probably be T. Higgins. But I think what this does is it kind of shifts the dynamic in what other teams are going to do offensively. Clearly, Dustin, we've talked, and our argument is you have to have a quarterback that can score you points. Obviously, the Bengals have that, but we've been pounding the table. The Browns need a quarterback. The Browns need a quarterback. Obviously, the dynamic in the NFL anymore is you have to offensively be able to score points. Kind of gone are the days right now anyways that defense wins championships, which certainly having a good defense certainly helps you, but you've got to be able to keep up offensively with some of these teams.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, I just stepped back and looked at that situation, and I was like, oh, geez, look, they signed, T. Higgins and Chase to these contracts, and Joe Burrow. And I'm like, well, yeah, they already had those guys. Like, they were already on the team last year, and yeah, they were fighting for a playoff spot, but that's the same team coming back, and in some ways is a little depleted from where they were last year. So I'm like, what are you getting? Like, unless you're going to go hit it in the draft and like hit on 80 or 70% of your draft picks, you're almost at a deficiency by signing those guys. Cause I'm like, okay, like you said, the guy wants a trade, and all of a sudden you've got three great guys on defense. Well, guess what? We still have Myles Garrett in the AFC North. And guess what? He's still going to come off the side and come after you. And by the way, if you can't get the ball off in time, he's going to sack you. Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, and I know there was some pressure to get both of them signed, but you're right. Like, what ends if a team called and said, hey, we'd love to have T. Higgins. Can you trade? And we'll pay him. And maybe it's not for that big amount, but maybe it's 8 or 10 million less a year. I don't know. It just didn't make sense to it. Just, I hate to say it, but it looked like a page out of the Browns in the past where they would just pay their players to stay and just, didn't it kind of feel that way? Like, we'll just pay them whatever they want because we don't want them leaving, right? Like, I don't know.
We don't want him leaving, and we don't want to upset the fans. And, I think us Browns fans, we expect the team to hurt our feelings. We expect the team to basically do the opposite of what we want to. So we're a little just scarred. But I think, that reminded me of the Browns, like, during the time that like Johnny Manziel was here, the Josh Gordon era, that really reminds me of something the Browns would have done several years ago.
Just pay him, just to make everybody happy, right?
Just make everybody happy. Yeah, it'll go away. It'll be fine, and then we'll go out and win 3 games, which Hey, we can't talk. We literally only won that many last year. So,
Right.
you know, life comes at you fast in the NFL. But, life does come at you fast, but you have to take the time to relax, and you should do that by maybe going out on the Lady Caroline. Dustin, talk to us about this.
Yeah, Lady Caroline getting ready to go out into Lake Erie. That's right. Winter is over. Tomorrow's the first day of spring, if you can believe it or not.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is officially the first day of spring. Go out, check them out. Book it for a party, your friends, a work event, or just go do a nice lunch cruise, dinner cruise, all available. And then while you're down there, hey, right next door is the Greater Cleveland Aquarium. That's right. Go check out the Greater Cleveland Aquarium. They have the shark tank. They have all the different species and amazing things that you can go check out with your kids, your grandkids, your family, or if you're coming into Cleveland and you're looking for things to do downtown, go check them out. It's really cool. It's about an hour and a half. You can do a self-guided tour, or you can have somebody take a tour for you. I was going to mention with True Fan Travel, guys, if you're looking to go to London, I know a lot of our fans are saving up to go over to London. The Browns have not been there in years. Use the code Brownies, for $100 off your deposit. That's a Benjamin in your pocket that you don't have to use if you just use the code Brownies to go book your trip with True Fan Travel.
You going to do it? You going to London?
I'm going to try to. That's the plan.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
here's the thing. I've never been to Europe, Allie. I've never been to Europe. So this would be a whole new thing. You know who's also over there is Paul Brown.
Yeah.
He's over there in Great Britain. So it'd be interesting to go. Have you ever been to England or any of that area?
I mean, I haven't done London, but just last year we did Ireland. We were all over that way. And then, I mean, obviously just now for our honeymoon, we were in the UK, but we did
Right.
Switzerland, we did some Italy, we did Austria, Liechtenstein. So yeah, we've explored some of that area.
Yeah. Speaking of Ireland, Allie, Cleveland does St. Patty's Day like no city I've seen, maybe other than Chicago. This place goes crazy. Downtown had thousands upon thousands of downtown partying for St. Patty's Day in the arcade. I went down there. It was insane. I think this is the number, but this is crazy to me. It was the 157th or the 158th annual St. Patty's Day parade in Cleveland. Like, that is phenomenal to think about the Irish heritage here.
Yeah. It really is. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but before we wrap up, I just want to talk about this. Juan Thornhill. Did you see that, Dustin? He hit himself. What he's got going on?
He hit himself in the face with the terrible towel. Is that the short of it? I believe in his video he tried to make.
And he's already talking and running his mouth, and I don't know. It's
Maybe
just
he should run his mouth on the field and play better. That's why he's not a Brown.
maybe he should run his legs on the field because he jogs out there after players. I mean, my goodness, I am glad to see the Browns part ways. Obviously, with Juan Thornhill, that will be a post June 1st designation. Just if you're not aware, I look, the Browns need to fill that. You've got to go out and you got to get a safety. I still think that's an area of need. Defense needs some help here, but man, Thornhill, just pain in the ass, man.
Well, hey, know the room. I say, know the room when you do that. Because guess what? You might want to come back to Cleveland, and be in the good graces of the fans. But throwing that thing around is gonna.
Yeah, that whole relationship is weird. Just kind of from the start, he was. I don't know, just didn't really seem to want to be here all that much, even though it is tattooed on his arm. But I don't know.
That's right. He's the one that I forgot about that. He's the one that said, "Oh, I'm so happy to be."
Yeah, that was short lived, but that's sometimes parting ways is for the best, and that is indeed what happened. And he is on a 1-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Let me ask you this, because since our last show, I'd like your opinion on this, and I know we got into it with Mary Kay a little bit. How do you feel about a Russell Wilson behind center next year? Because I think there is some, as these things start to drop. How do you? I have my opinion, and I'll give it to you after. But I'm just curious.
I think if we look at all of the remaining quarterbacks that are available, I do think that Russ probably has the highest upside out of them in terms of on the field talent. we love Joe Flacco and what he did for this Cleveland Browns team, but he was vocal in the sense that he does not want to be a quarterback mentor. All of these guys want to be starters. All of them, whether it's Kirk, whether it's Joe, whether it's Russ, whether it's Carson, they all want to be starters, and understandably so. They're all that's what they want to do. But for Joe Flacco, saying I don't really want to mentor a quarterback. I mean, at the end of the day, like you're going to, if you're David said earlier, if you're in your 40s and your name is not Tom Brady, more likely than not, that is going to be your role. And I think out of all of these guys, Russ is probably the one that's not right now. He is going to be your starter. If you sign Russell Wilson, you can expect him to be the week 1 starter. Now, I think that's still a good thing. I think that if you do draft Shedeur Sanders number 2 or Cam Ward, being able to sit for some time will be beneficial. I really do. I think that Russ, with the talent that is on this roster, is intriguing, and I think very, very quickly could be a playoff team. I don't look at Russ. I don't look at any of these quarterbacks as the answer. They are not your long-term answer. They are not going, I don't think, going to take you to the promised land. I could be wrong. Hopefully I am. But I think that Russ, while he's weird, he is a leader. He has won a lot of football games. He has a ton of passing yards. I think implementing him into the Kevin Stefanski system is interesting. I'd like to kind of see what that looks like, but sure. I don't hate it. I think there was probably a time, maybe even a few weeks ago, where I would have been like, "Oh, really? That's what we're going to do?" But as I've been able to sit back with some of these options, it really is slim pickings out there. It's not great. It's not like you have, just a Hall of Famer wanting to come into Cleveland. And you can make the argument that Russ is going to be in the Hall of Fame, but you get my point that, there isn't, the answer isn't right here that's going to be, hey, we're going to the Super Bowl. So I think out of all of the available options, I like it. Although he's kind of a quirky guy, he's a professional. You can expect him to come in here and win a good amount of football games and most likely be a good positive influence within the locker room and to your young quarterback that you're hopefully going to draft here in just a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm absolutely not opposed to it. And I think it solidifies in the short term the quarterback problem in Cleveland. So I look at it as, I agree, he can win you some games. He can probably win you enough games that maybe you're a wild card team at the end of the day, right? And you know what? If Browns fans, we should be happy the fact that we're fighting for a playoff spot on last week or two. And I know, it was interesting. Ken Carmen brought this up several weeks ago. Us Browns fans want us to go from here to here, like way up here. And it's like, no. How about just fight for a playoff spot every single year, the last 2 weeks of the year? I will take that all year long than being on a yo-yo from 3 wins to 11 wins to 4. Like,
it's exhausting.
Get me off of that damn train. Just keep me at 8 to 12. If I can play in the 8 to 12 range all the time, sign me up for that.
That'd be great.
We have Steeler fans that are just oblivious that, oh my gosh, you haven't had a losing season in the last 12 years and you're ready to drive Mike Tomlin out of town. You're nuts.
Crazy.
By the way,
it's crazy.
You don't have a Super Bowl roster and he still gets the most out of them. Like, what are you thinking here, people? Like, people's expectations sometimes are so far off, it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
But no, short answer, I would take Russ. He's your bridge quarterback. You bring him in, he wins you some games. And like you said, he'll be the culture leader in the locker room. People will rally around him because guess what? He does dink and dunk it down the field. He can make a tight throw. He's won a Super Bowl. Damn, if the different call is played, maybe he wins 2 Super Bowls and beats the New England Patriots, right? Like he's almost won 2 Super Bowls and like he's played at the highest level and been in the biggest games. I want a guy like that in my locker room.
Yeah, I agree.
At the end of the day. So sign me up for that. And you know what? Maybe you still take a quarterback at number 2. And
I think you do. I think that's probably the way that would go. But having the understanding that Russ is the starter for this season, and I'm fine with that. I'm cool with it because that kind of sets whoever that is up for probably prolonged success. Sign me up for that all day, every day.
And I will say this lastly. I don't know if you saw this, Allie, but Zagura was talking about this. The Browns are bringing Journey to the NFL draft party, and it will be the largest draft party put on by any team in the National Football League. They're doing a full concert 2 hours up to the draft.
You know what that means?
They're not.
That means they're taking
the quarterback.
They're taking a quarterback. You're not bringing Journey in and having the biggest draft party in the history of draft parties and not taking a quarterback.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Cleveland Browns have traded to the 22nd pick in the first
Yes.
round.
And they're taking an offensive tackle. No, they're taking a quarterback. Prepare. That's what's happening.
You don't build up that suspense just to have the
No.
room. Yeah, like
Taking a quarterback. But all right, that's all we got. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, Browns fans, go Browns.